Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is a special one, is a fellow Portuguese founder living in Brazil. You know that I've been covering a lot of Latin founders and Brazilian founders, especially in the health tech space, given my own condition that some of you have listened in previous episodes, so I will not repeat and send you back to other episodes. But today, my guest is Rui Brandão, the CEO and co-founder at Zenklub. Rui, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. Really excited to be here.
Likewise, and I'm really happy because before we started the recording of this podcast, Rui had the care to ask me a little bit more about myself, because a lot of the shows, the guests come, we prepare the session, we talk about them, and then we record the session, but no one wants to know about my story. So thank you, Rui. I got interviewed before interviewing you, but let's get to know more about the amazing stuff that and your story is amazing, and especially we are recording this show after the mental health day. It will not be released in the upcoming days, but at least there is a certain coincidence in the recording day of this podcast. So let's get to know more about you and your story.
What an open-ended question, right? So quick background on myself. I'm 32 years old. I'm a medical doctor by training. Started working, actually started university in Portugal, then did a year in Austria, and decided to end up med school in Brazil, where I've been based for the past 10 years. Always wished and actually got on the vascular surgery track. So started residency later in the US in vascular surgery. But throughout the end of my med school years and the beginning of my residency years, my mom suffered from a burnout, which later on turned into psychotic attacks. And finally, she ended up being diagnosed with a late bipolar disease. Those years really opened my eyes to how important mental health is. Both in terms of like how little we talk about it, how hard it is, even for a medical professional to take care of his own mother, and the impact it has not only on the person but on the loved ones and all sorts of relationship a person has. So with that, I decided to quit medicine. I quit my vascular surgery residency, flew from New York to Brazil again, and started Zenklub a bit over 6 years ago, so way before the pandemic, with the goal to really democratize and empower people with emotional health. And yeah, I've been the CEO of the company since then. The world has changed, mental health stigma has changed, and I think it's a much more outspoken topic, and I'm delighted to be here to talk a little bit about it.
That's an amazing story, and congratulations for transforming a threat into an opportunity, and again, helping others have the help that your mother had, and really progressing with your company. And especially in this topic that has really I think it's emerging more and more and more, and also given the lifestyle that we are living nowadays. For instance, we are just doing this remotely and having all these calls and all the pressure, the velocity, the social media stimulus and so on. If we are not able to go offline sometimes and to disconnect, it becomes difficult to get an end on our own mental health. And how has been this evolution and the different stages of the company? First, being a doctor and then moving into entrepreneurship, right? Deciding to start your own startup. We're almost thinking about it as a given, because now we know that you have built a great company, but at the time you should have a lot of questions. What the hell am I doing?
It's a good question. I think sometimes we we take some choices in life, and once we take them, we never look back. At least that's the way I operate. I would say there are three main things that led me to do this. So the first is, I've always thought that the health system is fractured. So it actually shouldn't be called health system. It should be called a sick system.
Right.
So even as a young physician, I always wanted to eventually be part of the management of the supply chain of healthcare, whether it would be in a hospital, a health plan, whatever, a pharmaceutical company, whatever. Because there's every year, more and more young doctors, nurses, therapists get out there in the workspace. But the dynamics of the system, it really doesn't put the patient or the client at the center. And it's the financial institution or the financial flow of money that actually dictates how it operates, right? So, that a hospital wants to kick you out as quickly as possible so that they have an extra bed, they can put someone sicker than you, and they can bill expensive procedures to the health plans. And the health plans in turn want to charge the companies, and that's how the flow goes. And so I've always had that look into, I don't want to be a one-on-one doctor. I really want to be a one-to-N. And by that, I'll eventually have to go into a management role.
Right.
But at 23, I'd never thought of opening my own company. So the second point is, I honestly saw how neglected mental health is. And honestly, like, feeling that burden so close to home and so close to heart, it just made me say, okay, there must be something here. And at the time, I was in New York, and Doctor on Demand just had raised like $75 million.
Right.
Talkspace had just raised like $12 million. This is 2015. And I was like, okay, digital health is clearly picking up in the US. And I started reading and discovered that there was already regulation in Brazil as well. And Brazil has the same like macro dynamics as the US, which is private health. Like, every company pays for private health insurance to your employees. So that's one thing, which is completely different to Europe, where like the state owns most of healthcare. Secondly, people are willing to pay out of pocket. So people are used to spend money on health, which is a second thing, which also doesn't happen in Europe that much. And thirdly, when you start thinking about the sheer inequality, so both in terms of cost, in terms of security, like for you to use services, the quality of services, the ease of access of services, you just start realizing, okay, Brazil is a country I know. It's a huge country. Regulation is on the way in the forefront. So a big tendency of Brazil is to follow the lead of the US. I thought, okay, I have an edge here. And thirdly, I just had the right endorsement from my parents, from friends, and from people I knew, started knowing in the startup venture world. Of like, I'm 23, I can, if everything goes wrong at 24, I'll be back. Like,
exactly. And it's always good as a doctor at the time, right? That you always had a plan B in a certain way, and a good career to follow.
It's important to have a plan B. It kind of makes you, as some people say, like, entrepreneurship, it's not about risk taking, it's about diminishing risks. Exactly. Right? And having a plan B, which I don't really want, but it is there, will allow me to just look forward. And if I fall back, I'll stand up and go on to the plan B.
I think that it gives a different, I would say, calm of mind to know that you have that plan B, or it's almost I'm not sure where I read this, but there was someone who had kind of 500K, or it was almost at the end of the cash flow of the company, and someone said, okay, you have here 500K. If you need more, that will allow you for another 6 or 9 months. And the person never picked the check, but just knowing that there was the check there, the story is a little bit different, but it's this kind of the moral of the story. And just having that option helps to make
it's
better
not
decisions.
Thinking
right?
of that plan B, but it's knowing that your risks are
Exactly.
diminished, right?
Trying to not use the plan B and going for the plan A. Exactly. Awesome. And you said you knew Brazil because you have been studying in Brazil before, right? So that was the rationale why you started thinking, should I go into Europe, the US, where you were studying?
Brazil
the
from
business.
a like continental perspective, one, two, lack of international competition. So like Brazil is that sort of country where if you know the meanders, like you can be very successful. If you don't, it's a clear barrier of entry. So that was second. And thirdly, because of the dynamics of the market, like Europe didn't make sense because of the public to private. Also because in Europe, people weren't so open to mental health or open to digital health. But Brazil, people are very avid users of all sorts of social networks and all like credit cards, and capitalism runs in Brazil, so it just made sense.
Sounds good. There was something that was being commented also, that Brazil follows more the US than even the Spanish-speaking countries, that in a certain way also have a tendency to look at what is going on in Spain, right?
Absolutely.
It's a good point.
We love the gringo view.
Exactly. And then of course you start the company. What has been some of the challenges that you faced in the 0 to 1 journey? Because just to contextualize, maybe it would be good also for the audience who don't know you to understand where you are in terms of growth, number of employees, rounds. I know that you have raised the Series A last year, but just give us a little bit more.
I'll give an
for the
overview.
ones. I've studied everything, so but the guests, but the audience know.
Sure. So Zenklub is 6 years old. We're currently at 130 employees. We more than 500 companies use our services. So we're now a B2B mental health company. We have a network of our own professionals of 850 psychologists, coaches, and mindfulness experts. And yeah, as you mentioned, we raised a 10 million Series A last year, $10 million last year, and we've raised about $15 million up to date. Funny thing is, for the first 4 years, we were completely bootstrapped. So nobody wanted to put a single dollar into our company. And then ever since 2019, we've raised every single year up to now. So that's us. So a couple of milestones here. We started off B2C, not B2B. So one of the first things like we learned from exploring the market is it's very hard to penetrate the health market. And so our initial thesis was, if we create a platform where people can book, pay, and do an online consultation for a third of the price, we will be able to scale and get to a certain volume where after that we can explore other channels, whether it's insurance, whether it's corporations. But we need to have the flexibility to grow on ourselves because we have to be nimble and fast. And so the way we started our business was basically, let's onboard 30, 50 specialists. Let's interview every single one of them. Let's understand their pain points and let's get a competitive price on their session. And so we started getting specialists which were willing to give us like free slots for a third of the price. In turn, let's create a very simple but easy to use user experience where a person can Google us online, can get to know us on Instagram, and they'll basically write down out what they're feeling: anxiety, depression, self-awareness, whatever.
Mhm.
We'll give them 3 or 5 specialists. They'll book, they'll pay, and they'll do. So like a 4-step process.
Right.
At the time, 6 years ago, this was innovation.
Exactly.
What was our first learning then? We were disrupting a market that, although it is a bit neglected, it exists. And
Mhm.
so our first barrier of resistance, our first resistance, were the actual specialist community. So we had to lobby our way with the Conselho Federal, like the psychologist, federal boards and psychiatrical medical boards, because they thought we were banalizing the profession by bringing
Wow.
therapy online. So
What
that
about
was our
that?
so we had to do a lot of research and really to prove our case. But thankfully in 2018, finally the boards in Brazil approved, and they fully regulated the market.
Mhm.
So that was our first learning. Like, don't go crazy about supply. Have a really trusted and small group of people close to you
Right.
that you can learn from fast, that they are willing to give you their time. So we wanted as many slots as possible from each individual, and you can you can grow your value proposition for them and for the end user. A second thing is, we really wanted that close group of professionals because we wanted to pass off quality to the end
Right.
user. So it's not about quantity, like you can
Yeah.
have the biggest supply in the world. No, it's about like quality and quickness to the consultation. Can I consult today? Can I consult now? Can I
Right.
consult tomorrow? So these were our two, like, basically success factors on the supply side. Second milestone is when we decided, after the regulation, so 2019, we've learned, like, we're probably doing, I don't know, 5,000 consultations a month. So really
Mhm.
small business yet. And we're like, okay, the biggest pain point we have in our business is that people don't have enough disposable income to pay for like $100 a month of therapy. Like,
Right.
that's just not Brazil's reality, right? So eventually the dynamics of our business, they weren't like evergreen, right? So we would have a good CAC payback, like 2-3 months, but we couldn't get that 3-to-1 LTV to CAC, 4-to-1 LTV to CAC that VCs, right? And honestly, a proper business has to have. So we decided to go on to the B2B. That's how it came. Because we understood, like, companies are having issues with
Yeah.
their employees. Employees are being asked more of their mental development, of their mental resilience, of their mental well-being. But there's clearly a value proposition to be offered here.
Right. It's interesting. You just approached one of the main pains of any, I would say any startup, but especially health tech startups, right? So which is the go-to-market, and understanding according to the go-to-market what is the ICP that we want to serve. And you even were commenting about the option of going through health plans and insurance, or going via the corporate way, or kind of the B2B2C, and through the B2B. I'm sure that the ones who are listening and are going through these questions are curious to know also what is your approach and what has been your experience on that side.
Awesome question. So yeah, it's true. Like, at the beginning, we did open up more than just the B2B. So we opened up, like, let's try to validate corporate, insurance, hospitals, and pharmaceuticals. So we had a different pitch to all these. So, like, for example, why should I go knock on Pfizer's door? Because they provide medicine, psychiatric medicine, so to depressive, to anxious people, right? Offering a teletherapy service to those users, end users, will enable them to have better adherence, better outcomes. And so, and we had all like, so for corporations, let's help leaders focus on professional development and let them refer their employees whenever they see they have an emotional issue or a personal issue to come to Zenklub. So it's much more of a, it's another completely different pitch, but the offering is sort of the same.
Right.
And what we learned, Mike, was one, hospitals don't have therapists. That was a hard, shocking truth for me. So like a 500 bed hospital has one therapist, and he's just there to do the routine of like critical cases, which is, in my honest opinion, like disastrous. Health plans at the time didn't care about mental health. Like they had other issues to solve, like fraud and oncology and orthopedics, which are much more costly. Pharmaceuticals, we weren't capable of validating. This is something I still want to validate in the future, but we haven't been capable of putting a good plan here. And basically, we proved software companies, tech companies, advertisement agencies, educational companies. So we just started seeing like leaders clearly saying, please help me. I don't know like how to take care of my employees. They're going through some personal stuff. Like we are asking them a lot in terms of self-development, in terms of results, right? And so these were the first sort of companies. This was our ICP. And in 2019, pre-pandemic, we had the chance. At the time, I was frustrated with the slow growth because we closed the year with probably like 12 logos, so not a lot. But we did learn a valuable lesson, which was how to sell, but most importantly, how to engage a massive employees to use Zenklub, and how to validate like the purchase of that company, like of Zenklub as a benefit, which proved itself very relevant because 2020 came in the door, right? Pandemic hit in March, and we grew from 12 companies to 185 in a single year. Without that was never our plan. And the most impressive thing was we not only grew with startups, but companies such as AB InBev, which is a 35,000 employee company, hired us. We had Natura, which is a 5,000 employee company hirings. We had Nubank, like hiring us for their users, not their employees, their users. So that was a clear like turn of events where mental health stopped being like the ugly duck in the room and started being
timing. The right timing in the market, because in the US it started earlier, right? And again, going from the 0 to 1, kind of the main questions on the deck. The TAM, of course, the TAM was a little bit proven in the US with the US benchmarks that we were talking about. But then there was, I assume, the typical question, but okay, are Brazilians willing to pay for this kind of service? They have the capacity to pay for this kind of service. So the TAM seems amazing, huge. It will grow a lot in the upcoming years as it happened in the US. But what is the willingness to pay and the capacity of the Brazilians to pay for this kind of? This was some of the questions that you got. Of course, you bootstrap it in the beginning, right? But maybe also because you didn't have appetite from investors at that time.
Absolutely, you're 100% right. I think back then and still today, but back then TAM was definitely the biggest question. Like we'd receive no's from. So I don't think there's a TAM. I think that's a niche market. So that was definitely the case. But I'll be honest, like our cap table and the investors we brought in, they come with a very long-term vision aligned with ours of this is clearly one of those issues that society needs to solve. I understand the TAM is growing exponentially. For instance, if you look at therapy sessions in Brazil, they've been growing 25% year on year for the past 7 years. So will you question about the TAM today, or will you question about the society question like and
Right.
problem in the future? And that's the sort of investors we brought in, to be honest, like short-term, go with the masses investors, did not invest in Zenklub, did turn down Zenklub. More missionary long-term investors did see like, okay, this is a strong, this is a huge problem, strong company, they have to prove themselves, but we're backing them.
Right. I'm just asking this because I'm sure that's a lot of the founders who are listening to us, or the executives who are thinking about starting their own companies are getting these kind of questions, and it's important to again, there are good fits with investors and work on your thesis, get better. But there is a certain point that also at pre-seed stage, or from 0 to 1, or at seed stage, you don't have all the answers, right? So that's where you were talking about go to market. Again, it's really important. I think it's one of the main questions. I would say TAM, team, and go to market would be the main questions that we would get at that stage, right? And we have been discussing how difficult it is to crack the go to market, and how many validations, and again, it's important, as you just shared, to keep going and to keep validating and to keep the enthusiasm, failure after failure, as Winston Churchill would say, right? It's not, this hypothesis was not correct, let's test a new one, right?
and you got to come to terms that some people will always question you about the same thing. Like, our next round will be a Series B. We're obviously always in touch with a group of investors, and there's some people like the TAM is an issue. Like, just cross them off your list. Like it happens, and it's all good. But as you said, like I think your job, especially on a pre-seed or seed round, it's validate the concept and find investors that really believe in yourself and in the space. That's it.
And this is a good point that we didn't discuss too much about the founding team. Again, you already explained a little bit of your story as a doctor, and we have other examples, but it's also a difficult transition to kind of create your business at, or build your business at the same time. From other perspective, you know very well the market, you have a strong domain or understanding of the doctor mindset and of the stuff that you are doing from a technical perspective as well. But how do you build the founding team, and what were the critical members of the team in the beginning of Zenklub?
So I started the company with José Simões. He's my co-founder. We're together still, and so he's one of those elements that really made me get on this track. So we met, we really connected, and he decided, okay, let's start this together. I'm not gonna jump in right away, but I'll keep my job. He was the head of product at Dafiti. And so I entered it with time. He came in with money and spare time. And that's how we bootstrapped it. So definitely a component there, and thank you for bringing it, which was super important. That's the first. So knowing that me and Zé, with time and his money, like we could go on and validate, that's first thing. Secondly, very complementary skill set. So I'm a doctor, Zé is a PhD in engineering. Secondly. Thirdly, he was the head of product of a 1,000 people company, one of the biggest e-commerces in Brazil. So also track validation there of scaling a business. And we just decided to make it happen, the two of us, since the beginning.
Love it. Great story. So kind of we covered the 0 to 1 journey and the issues with the go-to-market, the TAM, choosing the right investors, and of course the most important, building the right founding team. and having the best co-founder or co-founders around you. I think it's critical for the ups and downs. And I would say not only in the first 3 years, it is always a challenge, especially if I'm much more specialized in going from 1 to 10, and I can see the pain of getting there, and especially the ones we also look at being super successful. They keep having a huge pain of going from the 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100, and face those growth plateaus that it seems that there is nothing that we can do to go into the next milestone as quickly as possible. But anyway, let's focus now more on where is your brain today and your focus today, that is going from 1 to 10. And I would say also scaling the team, and of course you build the culture a little bit earlier, but any insights there on scaling up the team and Zenklub?
Yeah, I think we're exactly at the point where we're going through that second milestone from 1 to 10. And this it's been, so that's been the past 2 years. It's been very interesting personally and organizationally speaking. Organizationally speaking, so yeah, we went from like a team of 10 pre-pandemic to a team of 140, give or take now. There's a thing, Mike, which is very important, which is we're a mental health company, and something that we've now been able to master is the ability to really be transparent and really facilitate good discussions in the workplace that have growth as the output. So people that work at Zenklub today, they're not just missionaries because they believe in mental health, or activists because they want to be in a place that really values mental health, because that's not the only thing that we want. We want people that are really ambitious to grow, because that fulfillment of that mission is impacting millions and millions of people. And so I don't know if this sounds basic or not, but it's been very challenging. It was very challenging for us to get the right tone of voice of how to push the company forward. You know, it's called Zenklub.
Right.
It's mental health, but we're very ambitious. And so those are our lessons we've learned along the way. I'll tell you, like, the way we overput this is through being sincere, being transparent, really investing in people's development, investing in leadership development. And so I would say culture is definitely like the top one challenge. And I would say secondly, it's how do you guide your workforce, your teams, through the path of least resistance to grow? So how do you really, as more and more people come onto your company, like, how do you make sure there's one goal, that it's distributed across all of them? And we've had that particular challenge because we're a marketplace. We're a three-sided marketplace. So we have the corporate's interest, we have the professional's interest, and we have the person's interest. And sometimes it's hard to synthesize in a North Star metric. But again, I think we pushed through and we've captured value on that. But I would say those are the two main challenges, honestly.
Super interesting what you said, and something I like to say, it's every CEO, every company needs to be able to handle a two-sided marketplace to make customers happy and employees happy. So I would say we would have a four-sided marketplace, and if we add the investors on top of that, so the five-sided market. That's why it's not an easy job to be at
stakeholder
in the CEO
seat.
And aligning all those interests is one of the main jobs. Again, even you were talking about the different ICPs that you like to validate. Really, it's the product is the same, but we need to have a value proposition that is different for each of them. So super interesting point.
And it's a good way of putting it. I've never thought of it that way. And I think on the personal side, I think you have to be very humble. I think that's it. I think you're always learning. You might be very bullish and have your intuition and really want to fall through a certain way. But if people come at you with data points and with other facts,
Right.
just be humble to accept them. And learn as fast as possible and disseminate those learnings.
Do you think that it's helped you to not come from a business background? Because sometimes I feel that the ones who, especially even for the ones who have been leading companies before, starting up their own companies, they come already with a lot of stuff from their past, and
Biases.
and we think, and I'm talking about myself included, we think that we know stuff, and then we got surprised, or we think, okay, we have tried that, it didn't work. This is the way it works. This is the framework that I follow, and we stop listening. And all the theory is there, right? So we are able to say the good stuff, but we are not doing the good stuff. That's where also self-awareness comes. In a certain way, I think that's one of the advantages of the youngest founders that are now coming to start their own companies. In a certain way, for the ones who also transition from more a medical background into a business background, they become much more curious, much more open. They are not able to not know what they don't know, but they know that they don't know a lot of stuff, right?
see. I would put it in a different wording, maybe, which is naivety, right? The lack of knowing makes you take bolder risks, maybe.
Correct.
But at the same time, I think what you were saying is I think goes back to the point of humbleness or willingness to learn.
Yeah.
I think
For
even if you're a
side.
second, I think that self-awareness you just mentioned, I think that's and so you don't want to be very naive because you're going to take risks which could be fatal, but you always want to be hungry for learning and not just copy pasting past experience onto new experiences.
And of course, there's something that we always like to talk about on the show, which is your own growth, right? So coming from a doctor background into starting your own company, then seeing the company going from 0 to 1, and now from 1 to 10, having 140 plus employees responsibility. What are kind of the stuff or the recommendations that you would give to other founders and other CEOs on how to invest in themselves, on to keep growing? It's easy to say, again, it's very theoretical to say we need to grow quicker than the company. If not, we become the bottleneck of growth of the company. But at the same time, I'm sure that every founder out there and every CEO out there would love to grow quicker than the company. The way how to do it, it's really the $1 million question, right?
It definitely is. It definitely is. I would say it's picking up references. So some people love reading books. Like I read one book a year, but I make sure it is the book. I don't know how I do it, but the past 3-4 years I've been like, so books like No Rules from Netflix, from Reed Hastings about culture, or reading in a way. Some people have mentors and people close to them that really allow them to be vulnerable, share their stories and get back. I don't have a very big group of mentors, I would say, but I always try to have new and opportune conversations with people that can add value. Like if I'm having a growth problem, who can I talk to that I can discuss the current situation, right? But what I think I do is I read a lot of newsletters. So I have a couple of really good newsletters, in-depth newsletters that bring usually there's sort of both. For instance, Ross Simons, in terms of drilling down like the case of a big IPO or a big, I don't know, internationalization by a company, or at the same time, like more broad, open topics that really make you think differently about the world. So like Professor Scott Galloway is a big reference to me. It's like my Saturday go do. It's read his newsletter. But yeah, I think at the end I think you have to be intentional about chasing information that you need. That like, I'm really frustrated. I'm really roadblocked here. Where can I pick up information that will illuminate? Exactly. Because the answer is inside usually, but it's just a matter of looking at the problem in a different perspective, right?
Again, solving the bottlenecks and the big problems a step at a time, right? And focusing a lot on what are the most, it will be impossible to solve every single problem. We need to be able to live with that, but what are the ones that will move the needle? And something that we jump at that I would like to highlight about what you said is definitely this mindset of growing at all costs. If it is not well managed, it could work against a mental health company, a VC-backed company trying to deliver mental health services, improving the mental well-being in terms of mission, and at the same time being able to do the same in a VC-backed industry. It's not an easy task.
You have to be coherent, right? Like
exactly. It's the best way to describe the culture.
Absolutely.
It's not about what you say, it's about what you do, right?
And that's something I think we're really intentional, Mike. So one of the things like I really think about is like so we have like employee pulses every month so we're a fully remoted company. And we're really intentional about, like, for instance, everyone having, we want to be a remote company. We want to be a distributed company because we've been able to attract very good talent with it. But with that comes also the downside of, like, how do you get the message across? How do you show to your people, like, where do you want them to grow up to? And so, like, for instance, this past month, we just been able to, for the first time in the company's history, to start the new quarter, the fourth quarter of 2022, with everyone having individual KPIs set. Like, we have like 400 individual KPIs, all coming down from, like, and the way I see this, it's like, it's not having just a goal, but it's like people are crying out loud for psychological safety. People are crying out loud for clarity. They want to have responsibility. Okay, KPIs. Let's, for a single month, September, really drill down the strategy. And with every manager, with every lead, we're going to drill down to everyone has to have at least 3 KPIs. And so, like, I think this is something that really makes me proud, which is like being able to look at development needs and human needs with, at the same time, like, ambitious growing needs as a business.
Right. How to manage both. It's definitely the big challenge. Love it. And before we get into the final segment, I know that I'm pushing here a little bit the time. Sorry, Rui, which is any looking back and going through the different rounds that you have raised, any points that you would highlight for other founders that are going through the process of stuff that you learn going through fundraising?
Specifically regarding fundraising.
I think we kind of covered the bits: team, culture, go-to-market, not a lot about product, but of course here we can also invite Jose to talk about
absolutely. I would definitely say bring strong angels onto your round. That was definitely like a tipping point for us. Like, we managed to bring 1 and then 2 and then 4 and then 6. Once I knew it, I had like 10 really influential people that did a small check, but they were willing to put a good award out there, introduce me or come with me and talk to VCs about the specifics of mental health. And that really changed the game of our seed round, which later on impacted at our Series A, and so that would be the best advice possible I could give.
Got it. And in terms of the approach to those angels, any advice there as well?
I think like as a CEO or as a founder, you have to network. Full stop. Yeah. Like intentionally, we wanted people that had health insurance ties because that's a channel like we really want to explore, and we understand. Okay, we're not there yet, but eventually it will have to come onto our party. Second, other like HR/benefit companies, angel investors. I think you have to be intentional, and just bring people that will understand your business.
Awesome. So let's go into the final segment of the show, where I ask you a quick question and you give me a quick answer or short answer as you wish. But if you would have the opportunity to meet Rui at the beginning of Zenklub for a coffee, what advice would you offer to your younger Rui?
So many. I would say be more focused on validating your business than actually bringing money inside. I think yeah, that would be my main goal.
Strong one. What are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
Definitely having, like, our memory is short-sighted. I would go with the individual KPIs for the whole company. I think that was it's a recent thing, but it symbolizes so much, like to be able to understand your business so profoundly and being able to drill down. Every single person in the organization has a job to be done that impacts the goal. And that just...
We could do an entire podcast just about that topic. Maybe food for thought. You will get back to discuss that. And of course, you are always invited to come. There are so many stages that we'd like to cover. And I'm sure that you will keep scaling the company. So you need to come back to keep sharing the story. So worst advice ever received?
Worst advice I ever received? You should go to Portugal and internationalize the company. Like there was an era like we're being very pushed to like just go to Argentina, go to Portugal, and we decided to go to Portugal. It was a 4-month test, and it was just too soon.
So the focus today is still Brazil, and it's a big continent, as you said. It's kind of as the US market in that sense, that you are able to build a very big business without leaving the continent, not the country.
that came with a very best advice I received, which is don't run from your fight. Our fight was validating mental health in Brazil, and we conundrum the fact that no, let's go to Portugal, we'll learn a lot there and bring it back to Brazil. What? Makes absolutely no sense. So it comes with the best advice ever, also to don't run away from your fights.
That's a good one. Sorry to kind of add here an addenda in terms of thought process, which is, I think that's something that I also concluded, kind of doing a pilot in Portugal or a pilot in Spain to then going into Brazil or Mexico, depending if you go to Spanish speaking or to Portuguese speaking. I think that it goes in the direction of what you are saying. Don't lose the time with a pilot in Portugal or in Spain. Go directly to the market where you will scale. Because again, you are doing 2 pilots. You need to do the pilot. The market is not big enough. You need to do a second pilot. So then you need 24 months instead of the 12 months, right? So, and a lot of complexity, because then it's difficult to say to the clients that you have acquired on those markets, we will go away, to the people that you have hired on those markets, that maybe we need people working on a different time zone, understanding because Brazilian is not the same as or Portuguese from Brazil is not the same as Portuguese from Portugal, and the same from Spanish from Spain and Spanish from Mexico. Good point. Anyway, let's go into the resources. Favorite book?
I would go with no rules. Loved like how Netflix and Reed Hastings brought a clear blueprint on corporate culture, but at the same time there was a lot of psychological incentives, how people think and operate, and how they basically changed how to look into benefits, salaries, and everything.
Favorite movie or series, as you wish?
Series. I'll have to go with Breaking Bad. Movie, Love American Gangster, Shawshank Redemption. Those are two of my favorites.
Great resources. And finally, your favorite podcast, excluding this one.
Great. Favorite podcast excluding this. Like Masters of Scale, it was a good reference in the beginning. 20-minute VC, Zencast. Those are three.
Love those ones. Perfect. Rui, it was really a pleasure to have you on the show. As I told you, it was really nice to talk to you. Really enjoyed also your personal skills, not only the business skills and what you did both in business, medical, and the personal side. It's quite admiring. And again, thanks for joining me today and for joining our community.
Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure.
Likewise, and to our community, we keep bringing you the best founders and investors to try to make your life a little bit easier on your journey from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and hopefully from 10 to 100, and being able to build a big company with a huge impact on society with the work that you do. See you soon and keep scaling.